Welcome, Pamela. Super excited to have you here.
I'm super stoked to be here. It's been a while since we chatted, actually.
I know, isn't it funny that, life goes in full circle, but to paint a bit of a picture for our listeners today, you and I met, I was actually thinking about this the other day, but I don't know how our paths crossed on social media, but I do remember reaching out to you and saying, hey, we've got this function. It's obviously with another business of mine that was on a yacht, like on the Gold Coast, and come along, just bring yourself, we'll have some drinks, we'll, catch up. And that's kind of what happened, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I had all these people there, and it was literally you and I and Emma, another friend of mine from England who lives over here. And I think we just stood at the bar.
No, we didn't. She stood at the bar.
The entire time, apart from when people were on stage doing their thing. And we're just immersed in really good conversation.
Yeah.
Lots of laughs.
Yeah.
I just loved it. It was a real light-hearted night. And one of those was, we said, right, let's catch up again. And it just never eventuated. And then I think, was that pre-COVID? Was it before COVID or after?
I'm going to say after.
Yeah, it was after. And obviously we stayed in touch on social media, but we literally haven't caught up since.
For years. So it's interesting,
isn't it crazy?
Yeah, so when your message came through, I was like, oh my God, blast from the past. When was the last time? And I was thinking, when was the last time we talked? And I'm thinking, that was years ago.
Yeah, so a lot, Jesus, a lot has happened since then, hasn't it? A lot unfolded. And if only we knew then what we know now, hey?
Well, that's what life is, isn't it?
Isn't it?
It's like learning as you go.
Some big ass lessons there. So let's dive in with you. Let's open that vault, as we say, and let's go to you. To me, you are so colourful in so many ways. Big, beautiful personality, lots of stories, lots of laughable, funny stories, and lots of, oh gosh, we've only touched the sides. And that night, what opened my eyes a little bit, like even from being a little child, of where your life began. And we talked about that quite a bit that night. Blows my mind. And I'd like to share, let's paint a picture of who you are and where you've come from, and how your journey's led you to where you are today. So let's go back. Where were you born?
Barnstaple in Devon, England.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was that like for you? Your family, was there siblings?
Yeah, I had two half siblings, a half sister and a half brother. So same mother, different father. And we grew up in one of the roughest estates in England.
Yeah.
And
where was that?
Forches Estate.
Is that still there?
It is, actually.
Is it?
I pulled up some pictures on Google Earth the other day to have a look at it. And I did some research on it when I was writing my book, Making Broken Beautiful.
Yeah.
And because I wanted my book and the story and my relaying of that to be as close to the truth as possible. And I didn't want my facts to be messed up. So I actually got in touch with my half brother and half sister to say, am I making this up? Am I exaggerating? And they're like, no, actually, you're under-exaggerating this bit, and do you remember that? So it was actually a kind of a good little reconnection with them, but we're not really in touch.
Right.
But yeah, so we grew up on that estate. My mother never worked. She was very backward and uneducated. My father worked for a little while, and then he had a problem with his back, a slip disc, and then he never worked. But he was a very violent man. So he used to knock us all around. My mother she copped most of it. So I don't know how much you want me to share with that, but
how much do you feel comfortable?
Well, she was always getting beaten. He was a controlling man and used to sleep a lot, bang on the ceiling and shout down to her to bring him up cups of tea or whatever. And she had to get up there really quick, otherwise she'd get beaten. And whether, when I was a little girl, he threw me down the stairs and broke my arm. I crushed into the door and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. And I started like sort of biting him when I was about 8 years old because my mum was just getting beaten all the time. And I clearly remember running in about 8 years old, and he had her head and he was cracking it up against the wall, and I just beat him on the back of the leg, and all he's done is picked me up by my legs and power drive me into the ground and stuff. So, yeah, but I was actually really disappointed, and I hated my mum for the longest time because she was getting beaten anyway. And in my mind, you're getting hurt anyway, so why don't you stand up for yourself? So I never had much respect for her. It wasn't until I was an adult that I started understanding she was just frightened. But fast forward from that, before I go there, so in my book I've written a few of these things, not everything, otherwise it would be a book of horrors. But I found this fat cat, and I loved animals. They were kind of like my, like Black Beauty. Remember Black Beauty?
Yeah.
He was my hero, and he was so brave. But I found this fat cat, not realising it wasn't fat, it was actually pregnant, and I hid it in the airing cupboard, and it had all these kittens, so I was stealing food and milk from the neighbour's doorstep, because I used to get milk and cheese delivered to the neighbours' the doorsteps. Did you ever have that?
Had that. The milkman.
Yeah, the milkman.
Yeah.
And so I was stealing milk to feed this cat. And unfortunately, my dad found them and made me hand them to him one at a time while we flushed them down the toilet. Yeah, so that's the kind of man he was. My mum got brave enough. Fast forward there to what I was going to share was at 15, she ran away, took my sister with her, and she disappeared. I didn't find her for
you?
Without me. She left me there with my dad and my brother. And so then it was just us three. And obviously then I took over her role and was cleaning, and we had one of those mangles. So when we had to clean the bed sheets, you had to put them through the mangle to
dry them out.
To get the water out, and then hang them on the line and stuff. And
did you? So what were like? How old were you then? 15.
Yeah, I came home from school one day and she'd gone, and he was angry. So obviously we all got. Well, my brother, I don't remember my brother getting beaten much, but he was my father's son, and the same, his son. So, anyway.
How did you feel then at age 15, and like what was your relationship despite everything, so much going on in a, with a violent father figure? I mean, can we call him that really, a father? But
it was my stepfather. My real father, I have no idea who. He died apparently, but my mum was a liar, so I don't know whether he did die or whether it's just a story she told her.
Did you have much of a connection with your mum? Like,
no, not really.
So her leaving that day, did that have a huge impact on you? Like, were you heartbroken because she'd gone? Was there a resentment there? What was going on for you at that time?
Linz, I think my greatest gift in all of that was there was an Irish couple that lived down the road. They were as poor as we were. Those days where you didn't have food and you relied on school meals. But they loved each other, even though they had no food, and they really liked me. So if I was this person that my father used to say I was, because you'd be curled up in a ball and you'd just be kicking you till you got exhausted and whatever. And if I was the person that he said I was, worthless piece of shit, you'll never be anything. And I just remember curling up there and just saying, I'll show you, I'll show you, I'll show you, I'll show you, over and over. And he'll get tired in a minute, and he obviously did. But they would be treating me the same way.
Yeah.
And then I had a boyfriend at 15 who lived on the other side of town, and his parents didn't approve of us at all because I was from definitely the wrong side of the traps, and they owned their own house, and they had a telephone inside their house. It was really cool because I was used to the telephone boxes and putting 2p in and listening to dollar disc. I don't know if you ever did that. It's really cool. We actually broke into one of those telephone boxes. If I can say that.
Dial-a disc? What
it was like that? Top of the pops. You could listen to the latest record.
Really?
Yeah, you put 2 pence in and you could listen. And me and my friends, we used to go, let's listen to see what it is. And anyway, little red phone boxes. But they had a phone inside their house, which was like really cool. But they didn't really approve of us. But they treated me with respect and kindness. Because Ian was my boyfriend at the time. And so interesting enough, I was with him for 8 years. And
wow.
When I came back at 15, and a half. We'd been together 6 months. I'd been allowed to go on holiday with him and his family because he wouldn't go without me. So they had no choice but to take me. And in that 6 months, short period, my dad his anger was just off the charts because my mum had gone and he didn't know where she went. Like I said, it took me 15 years to find out where she went. So I was in my 30s when I found her. And I went on holiday, and it was the best time of my life. I just, we went to France and Italy and Germany and Switzerland and Luxembourg. And I loved going through Luxembourg because I used to have a little radio that I put under my pillow. And I used to listen to Radio Luxembourg. It was pirate radio.
Wow.
And then I'm in the country. And I'm like, oh, this is just so cool. I'm 15 and a half, and we grew up the way I did. Going and somewhere like that was just amazing.
And of course, they're looking after you as well, like making sure you're okay and you're being catered for, and all these things that you'd had to worry where your next meal was coming from. All of a sudden, you're traveling and just at peace. I would
being
imagine.
On a boat going across to, going across Dover and stuff like that. And we went and saw these like caves with stalagmites and stalactites, and it was the best holiday of my life. However, and this is something I actually struggled with for the longest time unconsciously, and that's why we know where we're stuck unconsciously, because we get triggered. But I'll come back to that if you remind me.
Yes.
And I married the best thing that ever happened to me with the worst thing that could ever happen to me, because when I came home, and before I share that with you, I'll just backstep for 2 seconds. Because my father had stepped up his violence because he was angry at my mother leaving and taking my sister, because she was a violent woman too, and I'll share that as well. But we put an ad in the paper for a companion for my dad, thinking my brother and I, we need to get him someone, because we don't know what's going to happen if he carries on the way that he is. And we interviewed all these people. We had all these letters coming through, and we were reading them. And my brother was really quite funny reading letters from some of his friends. He'd go, that's one from Barney's mum. I know Barney's mum is our mum in this house, and stuff like that. So that was kind of funny. We're like, whatever. So we're like, no. So we were like, no. And then we met this woman called Jean, and I'm happy
But hang on a minute, though. Can I just say, the obvious thing is, I mean, obviously you're older and wiser now, but I'm thinking you're putting an ad in for bless you, looking out for your dad, but also taking the spotlight off yourselves.
100%.
Then, it's kind of looking after yourself, looking after him.
Yeah.
But also leading, bringing someone else into the house, knowing how violent your dad was.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
No, it wouldn't even enter your mind.
It didn't enter my mind. But, what's interesting about that, and it was really kind of, it's funny how the universe works in karma, but my saving grace was to escape all the violence. I'd spent all my time in the library. So by the time I was 15, I was very well educated and very well read, because I needed to understand what was going on, especially with the family down the road, the Irish couple, treating me the way they did, and then Ian's family treating me the way they did. It's like I had 3 different prototypes, or whatever you want to call them, sort of examples of family environments. So I couldn't be what he was saying I was, because otherwise they would treat me like that, and so would this group.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like I needed to understand human behavior. So I've been learning, I'm 63, and I've been learning about human behavior and the mind and all of those things that go with that ever since I was, 13, 14.
Wow.
Because when I was in the library lady liked me. And she'd bring cookies and things like that. So I'd stay in the library until I was told, you need to go now.
And probably felt safe.
I did feel safe there. Yeah. It was a safe environment. She liked me. And I say she brought me cookies. But I read everything. I read everything on people, on human behaviour, on how we use our minds and what makes people do what they do. But yeah, so I didn't even know. And you know what? I didn't even think about that until you've just said that about bringing Jean in. For me, it was about safety and about taking the spotlight off me. You're exactly right. And saving my little brother, because I was always protecting him and my sister when my mum was there.
Yeah.
And from him, we'd hide behind the couch, and I would get them to go, and I would cop it so that they didn't. I'd go, you guys go outside and hide and blah, blah, blah. But
are you still in contact with them now?
Not really. No. Like I said, I did get in touch with them when I was writing my book, because I wanted it to be as close to the truth as I could remember, not embellished in any way.
Yeah.
And
Because they say that, don't they? Like the mind. Interestingly, I was actually listening to a podcast not that long ago. I think it was Gabo, who was saying that when people actually tell a story or they're traumatized by a story, it's quite well known, or quite often it's actually not even the story or the variation of the story
100%
that they've created themselves, or they've added something to it, or they've taken on other people's emotion attached to that. So then all of a sudden, you know, the likelihood is that that version never happened at all.
Yeah.
And so then you're going through life feeling wounded or traumatized, or however that shows up for you, on a version of a story that never actually happened.
Yes.
How crazy is that?
Well, and that really is true for people who live in that trauma.
Yeah.
You know, for me, because I was so well educated, I decided when I came home to an empty house, which is what happened when I went on holiday with Ian, and we came home, the house was empty. So this woman, Jean, she'd been the one that persuaded my stepfather, Arthur, to let me go on this holiday, because I said to Ian, I'm not going to be able to come.
So Jean was the companion?
She was the companion, yeah. And we didn't like each other the minute we met. And because she started coming in, she looked Madame Bouquet. You know who Madame Bouquet is? You know, she was like Madame Bouquet. She had this dress on and her hair and her earring, like pearl earrings, but fake ones, and her handbag on her arm. And she'd come in our house, and we lived in a shit pit. It's like she walked into our house, and she had said, Arthur, and whatever, and he's made her this cup of tea. He's materialised a cup and a saucer. I don't know where that come from. He must have borrowed it from the neighbours.
Or let's just address the fact that he made someone a cup of tea.
Yeah, and then he sat, and we're all on best behaviour, sitting up like this, and I thought, this is so contrived. And she started using all these big words. So me being me, I'm going, oh, I know what that one means. Do you want the dictionary version of that? And I was a bit too lippy for my own good, honestly. It didn't help me. So we didn't like each other, because she tried to baffle everyone with her long words, and I obviously, spending all my time in the library, I ate knowledge, and I still do.
Yeah.
Because knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And education is power too.
So were they romantic, or was it just a companionship?
No, because, and let me just fast track his life for 75 years. As soon as her mortgage was paid off, she kicked him out. And I found him at 77, I think he was, when last time I went to England. And he was living in this little apartment, and Jean had kicked him out. And he'd taken her to court. And my brother actually stood up for me in court. And because she was saying, oh, Arthur was a violent man, and he used to do this, this, and this. And my brother said, ask her, from the thing, ask her about kicking my sister out. And he said, daughter then, kicking my sister out when she was on holidays, and her coming back to an empty house, because he'd been kicked out too at 11. I didn't know this until I talked to him about when I was writing my book.
Wow.
Yeah, she'd left him at 11 years old on the doorstep. So she'd made my Arthur move out while he was at school and I was on holiday. She cleaned out the whole house and made him move in with her. But because he was only 11, some neighbours had reported that he was out on the doorstep for a couple of nights.
Gosh.
And I think it might have been Barney's mum, actually. Barney, because William and
so
Barney
she did come in the circle in a different way.
Yeah, and it was really funny how that went. But they called the police, and then she had to come and get him. And then she made him sleep in the garage, and
oh, that's just tragic.
with the dog and stuff like that. Yeah, so she was not a nice person, but she used Arthur to... So how's that for serendipity, though? It's like karma.
Full circle, right?
Yeah, and he said, well, Jean kicked me out, and I'm 75. And I'm like, yeah, and I was 15, And
so where did you go then? You came back, the house is empty.
Well, I knew... Well, because I'd just come back from holiday with Ian, but the Irish family, I knew where they lived. And they lived a lot closer than Ian did, and I didn't think I could go and knock on his door. So I actually went up to them, and they left me. Well, first of all, I went up to her house, Jean's house, and I knew where she was. And I've written about this in my book, actually. I knocked on the door, and she opened it and asked me what I wanted. And I'm like, the house is empty. She goes, yes, Arthur's moved in with me now. And I thought, oh, okay. And I went to step over the doorstep, and she said, there's no room for you. And I said, well, where do I go? And she goes, it's not my problem. And then I said, and I could see my dad in one of those high wingback chairs, and I could just see his head. So I shout down, Dad. And she said, that's the thing. He's not your dad. And I kind of thought that and knew that, but I knew that then, she confirmed that. And I won't tell you the words on this, what I said to her, but I wanted to just give her a bit of a slap. But I swore at her a few times, and she just said, "You're not our problem," and she shut the door. That was it. So I kicked the door and threw rocks at her window. But
as you would, though.
But then I just went, well, what do I do now? And I honestly, Lindsay, I think being so well educated, just that saved me, because I thought, I'm looking out the door, knowing what's obviously going on, and thinking, this is not going to be my life. This is not going to be my life, and where can I go? And my mother always it makes me emotional. I don't know why that's making me emotional. My mother always just sing this song, "Walk Tall and Look the World Right in the Eye." And I wrote a poem about that, because one of my other books is a poetry book, and it's about, it's making me emotional, walking tall and going, this is not going to be my life. And I walked up to the Irish family and just said, this is what's happened. And they looked after me for a couple of days, and then I went to stay with Ian for a couple of days, and then I think they helped me find a place, and I lived in someone's attic for 12 months. Slept in on a mattress in their attic.
Was that, and that kind of turmoil for anyone in particular, just being so young and 15 yourself, when you moved and lived in the attic, did that feel better than what you'd come from? Like, did you actually feel more at peace there and safe there, even though you were in someone's attic?
It's a really good question. I don't know. I think I just shut down that part and moved on. I've always been able to compartmentalise.
Yeah.
And so I think, because my brother...
Well, you've had to, haven't you?
Yeah. My brother found out where I was living and was stealing food from Jean and Arthur's house and bringing that to me.
Oh.
And it's really funny, because two people have got in touch with me, actually. One lady, Jean, her name is, she remembered me from being a little girl. And she said, you've always been this bright, bubbly little thing, but we all know what was going on. I'd come out with bruises all over me, but still always with a smile on my face, and how can I help? So it's obviously I always think that we're here for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's always been obviously my soul path to help others, and because I'm still, even despite all that, I'm still a beautiful, kind, loving person. I'll do anything for anyone. And from what you know of me
100%.
too. So you can let those circumstances change you, change the life that you have, and change who you become and what you think about people, and be bitter. And, that's happening in my life right now with a past partner, but I'll share that at another time.
When that's all
done, yeah. Or you can just decide that that's not going to be your life, and that's what I decided. But if I hadn't been educated, if I hadn't spent all that time in the library, I might never have had that. And if I hadn't had 3 different families to look at and go, there's something, what is it about that
comparison.
family and that family? Yeah. So what is it about these people? Because they don't, especially the poor people, they didn't have any more than we did. But they still loved each other and still had fun.
Yeah.
Whereas my house was just one of horror and violence.
So it's kind of a crossroad, isn't it? Because they say it's interesting, like even with twins, let's say, they can have exactly the same life.
Yeah.
But both, you can have one who's, now drug addiction and, gone down a terrible path. And then the other one who's successful in life, love, business, all, but yet they've walked in pretty much the same shoes.
Yeah.
Did your brother, obviously age 11, being left on the doorstep, I know you're not in great connection with him now, but how did his life pan out? Did he...
From the conversation that I had with him when I was writing my book, because I said, William, I want you to help me to remember what I'm remembering. And he reminded me of a few other things that I'd completely forgotten about. Jean used to make him sit on the floor and eat. He was treated nothing better than like a dog. But he was very smart, my brother. And he used to be a mechanic and do a lot of stuff with cars. So because he was banned to the garage and sleeping on the sofa, he would just do stuff to a car.
So he made something out of something good out of a really
and he did something
situation.
with her car. She paid him then to actually fix it.
Oh, silver lining.
She had no idea. So what? My oil's leaking, and my brother would have done something to it. So
to make it leak.
I said, well, I can fix that for you, or you can take it to the garage. It will cost you this much. So if you want,
brilliant.
Yeah. So, but he's Yeah, he met a lovely girl, and they've got a family, and so he moved on with that. But I think it was a little bit different from him. But interestingly enough, he was the main reason that I started fighting back when I was 15, because my father had me, in one of his rages, he had me trapped behind a chair. I mean, it was pretty stupid. I just ran to a corner and he'd be on the chair, and of course the chair gets pulled away and now you can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And he's come flying out of nowhere with a butter knife and stabbed my father in the arm. And there was that moment, it was a turning point for me. And I'm thinking, he's 11 or 12. He would have been 12 then. And he's fighting my father. And I'm like, okay, well. So then I started fighting back too.
Yeah.
And from then, but then it gets, the 15 and a half coming home to the empty house. And this is ridiculous. Because I had those 3 comparisons, I think that helped me think there must be more, and there has to be more. And I wasn't about to let that destroy my life. I saw what the Irish family had. I saw what Ian's family had, because they were working people and owned their own house, and I wanted that. And so I kind of based my life around that. Just learning, how can I get past that? But it has you have your sticking points and you have your unresolved issues.
Yeah.
And the only way that I think I said that earlier is to understand what that is, and how deep it is by your triggers.
Yeah.
Things that trigger you. Because no one has the power to make you feel anything. But what they can do is trigger your unresolved wounds. So when someone says something to upset you, if you get upset at them and blame them, you're actually giving them power over you.
Yeah.
And then you might get to express how you feel, which is great for the moment, until someone else does the same thing, and someone else. You don't grow from that.
No.
But if you upset me and I blame you for upsetting me, A, I just gave you power over me, and B, I'm just thinking, I'm not growing from that. I'm not acknowledging that feeling comes from inside me.
Yeah.
But if I focus on what did you just make me feel, then I can grow exponentially from that. And I can actually say thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just showed me something about myself that's unresolved and hiding in here, silently sabotaging me, but now it's been brought to my awareness and I can grow from that.
Yeah.
And that's the main core of my teaching and my 6-week Reset Your Life program, because you don't need to struggle and you don't need to suffer. And if you turn that around and know that pain is an opportunity for growth or a signal for growth, you'll look at it completely differently and you'll use that rather than be defined by that.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how you go through all of that and then your life has been around helping people, I mean, in some situations, who've been in similar situations like you in some shape or form, or, are quite wounded, But so when you left home and you've lived in the attic for a year, and you said you were with Ian for 8 years.
Yeah.
And then so why did you split up with Ian after 8 years? If
we actually got married at 21.
Did you?
We did. And then divorced at 23. You can't be with someone, I don't think, from 15 to 21 and 23 by the time we divorced. We grew together and we were too young.
Yeah.
I think it was just too young, and kind of got together because I think people have expectations of you. It's about time you started a family, been together long enough, and I wasn't ready for a family at 23.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that was the norm then as well. Like my mum and my dad met. My mum was 14. My dad was 17. And then they married when my mum was 17.
Yeah.
Had my brother when they were 19. Well, mum was 19 and 22 when they had me.
Yeah.
She had me. So, and they're still together. But it was...
it's just what you did.
It's just what you did. Yeah. So young.
Yeah.
So you divorced, and who called that? Was that more you or
it was
mutual?
Always me.
Always you?
Yeah.
And how did his parents feel about that?
Well, the mum wasn't happy with me. I saw her once and she said, "You've hurt my little boy." And I just said, "We've hurt each other."
Yeah.
There are things that going on in relationships that parents don't know about. And, I think there was a few things. We were in a nightclub once and his best friend came on to me. And I'm a very loyal person, and I told him where to go. And he slapped me across the face, and I told Ian about that. And he said, "Well, you must have deserved it." So you must have said something to deserve it.
Yeah, so that's not a sweet boy talking,
that's
is it?
not, no. And so there was lots of little things like that which I won't even bother with, but it's like, no, this isn't where I want to be either. It's not what I want. And so
you knew your worth, and I think also, I've had this conversation with friends before as well, where you can have the most amazing relationship. Like, you can be with someone who's just, no one's perfect, but perfect in your world.
Yeah.
But if your worlds aren't aligning, if it's just not meant to be, you don't have to justify that.
Yeah, 100%.
You just have to know that it's just not where you want to be, and that's okay, as long as you're kind and respectful and
100%.
do all the right things. There doesn't have to be a big thing, big story around it.
No.
Does there?
No, you have to honour each other, and it depends why you're in the relationship.
Yeah.
So many people are in relationships for security, and the males can be in there for control. And the minute you change that dynamic, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
From Ian, I was going out with a boy for 4 years who lived with me.
Yeah.
As this for a pattern. And then started a lawsuit against him. It took me for half of everything I had.
Oh, no.
That was in England. I haven't learnt my lesson. And then I was married for 30 years to my children's father. And we had the best time. We were like brother and sister, but in the end, we'd been together for 30 years. I was never one of these people that jumped from relationship to relationship. I just liked stability and security. But we had a great time. We travelled for 17 years, coaching skiing and snowboarding and mountain biking and climbing, and the kids had a great life.
Amazing.
And 6 months in America, 6 months in Australia. For 14 of those winters were back to back.
Wow.
So, but then I looked at one day and I said to the kids' dad, I love you, but not in the way I think a wife should.
Yeah.
And my kids were 15 and 13, and I think Holly was 17, because there's 4 years difference between them. And I feel guilty about that. I split my family up, but I was being controlled. And
was that something that, obviously you didn't wake up one morning, decide. People say that. I just woke up one morning and said that's enough. I don't believe that. I think it's something that chips away over time. But
I think it does, but I think the final decision you can wake up one night.
For sure, 100%. Yeah. But I don't think you great wake up one morning.
No.
I think it's little flags that pop up and
the kid's dad was a controlling person.
In what way?
He used to tell me what I could do, what I couldn't do, where I could go and what I couldn't do. So I would say, I'm going somewhere, I'm going to go and check the post. I've already checked the post, just come home type of thing. Or I would ask permission if I could do something, and no.
Wow. You do not.
Not now.
Not now. Hell no.
But I did at the time.
Isn't it funny? But was that like, did you perceive that as, he's just caring, he's just looking out for you,
100%.
He loves me, that's why I don't need to check the post, because bless him, he's checked the post.
So,
and then, like, isn't it funny, they say what those little things in the beginning, what you think is so cute, and end up being the things that you just can't stand, like
100%. No, I thought that I took the controlling as security and caring and love, and I guess in one way it is a sort of love, but he acknowledged that he'd been controlling, and I used to have to justify why I wanted to do anything. Would say things, I would want to buy something, and he'd say, I tell you what, you wear everything in your wardrobe for 6 months, and then I'll give you $1,000, you can go and spend on what you want. So sweet. So I'd wear everything in my wardrobe for 6 months, wear whatever I wore and put it on the bottom and wear. So I wore everything. And then he said, well, I'll just prove to yourself that you don't actually need
God.
it. So
that's actually making me come out in a rash.
But I fell for it. And then I would fall for things like, I've seen these shoes I want to buy, like trainers. Well, they'll be cheaper in America. So I wait till I get to America, but there's more choice in Australia. So I'd go back to Australia, and it was actually really good. And so I thought, right, I'm going to create my own money. So I started crocheting all these beanies, and I could crochet a beanie with ear flaps and tassels and everything in an hour. And I made 300 of them and would sell them in the shops. and I'd made them in Australia for America because I went round and networked and got them in all the shops. And then when I was in America, I made them for Australia. But then I wasn't allowed to keep that money because you can't keep money for yourself like that. That's got to go in the family pot. The same with all my tips and stuff like that. So I got fed up with asking for permission and whatever, but...
Gosh, it's very 1950s wife vibe, isn't it? Like
It was, but you can justify that because we had a great life.
Yeah.
I was coaching skiing and snowboarding.
Do you think there's a part of you with that? And it does sound like an incredible life.
It was amazing. Yeah, to every
and
degree.
Obviously the girls loved it, had a great life. But do you think a part of you subconsciously somewhere, because that was an incredible life, and given what you'd grown up with, oh my God, that would have just been what you'd read about, right?
100%, yeah.
And so
sort of stories are made of.
Those what appeared to be little things then, and of course there's worse, for sure, but they just seemed like exactly that, just little things.
They did. And I was having a by comparison, you were going to say, and that's true. But it was, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and she said, "Why do you allow yourself to be so controlled?" And I'm like, well, as you say, it doesn't really matter. It's like, I just find a way around it. And I said, at least I'm not getting beaten. And that just came out like that. And she said, and so you shouldn't be. And
wow.
And it was interesting because for my 50th, I think, my birthday, we were going out for dinner, and I wanted to have a couple of drinks, and I'm not very good at drinking. So I said to the kids, Dad, can you give me a ride? And it's like a 5-10 minute journey at the most to take me to where I was going to go. And the answer was no. I've already been over there today into that place. And I just don't want to, in case my kids listen to this, I don't want to, so, but he wouldn't take me. So I had to get my friend to say, can your husband come get me to bring me over to you? And he did. And it was just little things like that I thought, wow, I'm not even worthy of you giving me a lift. That's only a 10-minute journey or trip away. So in the end, I just thought, I'm not in love anymore. I'm not, and I don't know if I ever really was. And I admitted that. I said, I don't know if I ever was in love. I think I saw what we had as, it was fun, it was great, and it was security. But you deserve to be loved by someone the way a woman and a man should love each other, and the way a husband and wife should love each other. Yeah. And I don't love you like a wife should. I couldn't be any more honest than that.
And on the flip side of that, you deserve to be loved, and appreciated and adored, like you should be too.
I know, but you don't think about those things. You just think about what I'm not giving, or at least I didn't anyway. And interestingly, so then I go into the next relationship a year later, and that's another chapter.
And do you see, without going into that too much for obvious reasons, but do you see, life presents us with lessons, and we'll keep repeating those lessons until we've learned?
100%.
So do you see lessons that have come, there's that big slap over the head again, it's here again. Am I going to dismiss this, or am I going to learn from this?
Well, my next year relationship, which I will talk about more completely in another podcast, but that was a very dysfunctional family. And I fully believe that the universe put me in that to be able to right all the dysfunction, because I grew up with dysfunction. But this time, instead of being abandoned, I can actually leave it. And that's what I did.
And you can fix it.
And I can fix it. And I did. I spent 9 years trying to fix it and put it right, and loving those children as I wish someone had loved me as a child. And I gave my all to that.
Which is a beautiful thing, and the world needs more people like you. But at the same time, sometimes things aren't there for you to fix, know. But
I don't think I was. I think I was fixing it to put a right a wrong.
Correct.
Because I couldn't have fixed it as a young girl.
Yeah.
But I think it was mainly. I honestly do think it was for me to put right the abandonment from dysfunction. It's like I don't need to be abandoned. I can move away from dysfunction on my own accord rather than being abandoned. I think that was to redress that balance.
Almost like a step back in time to try and heal that wound.
100%.
And then heal it over, and then we're good now, and then we can move on from that.
Yeah, I think when we're fixing other people or healing other people, we're actually healing the inner parts of our own wounded child through someone else.
Yeah. And distraction sometimes with what's really going on too, yeah?
Yeah, that too saves you looking at yourself if you're healing someone else.
Yeah.
For sure, but we can get stuck there.
Yeah. So with you and the work, let's dive into that a bit with your permission. Do you think, and you and I spoke about this earlier as well, when, you know, I mentioned to you about me having therapy, and you know, and it comes up quite a lot actually with others, not necessarily to do with the podcast, but with friends or friends of friends and people who've come to me and asked for recommendations for therapists. And what I do hear a lot is people will say, I went to therapy once.
Yeah.
And disclaimer, this is not to say to all listeners, everyone needs a therapist. I mean, I think in a perfect world, everyone would be in a position to just to vent and just to offload and get some tools if they don't have that.
100%.
You know, I think it'd be amazing.
Definitely.
But it comes up where people all go to a therapist or a counsellor, however that looks for them, and they go, no, it's not for me.
Yeah.
And what I do agree with in that sense is I do believe it's like walking into a room or like meeting someone for the first time. It's a click.
Yeah.
You just warm to them. There's something about them.
Yes.
I feel at peace with them. I feel safe. And you do need to feel safe with that person. You're about to spill your guts and, you know, put everything out there. Of course, you need to feel safe.
Yeah, for sure.
Or potential to feel safe, right? And so I do get that. And I come from that place. I can read a room pretty well. I can read people pretty well. I think I'm a good judge of character. I just go with my gut. It's never let me down. And if it has, I haven't listened to it. Yeah. You know, it's one or the other.
Red flags don't go green.
Exactly. So I get that.
Yeah.
And I get sometimes you might need to go to 2 or 3 till you feel. But if you've gone to 2 or 3 and then you're going, it's still not for me, then that, I believe, then that's where you need to put the spotlight back on yourself and go, because, you know, I've had people close to me who've gone to a therapist, said it's not for me, and I've gone, what have you told them? And they've said I'm good, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm like, it's not about being something wrong with you, it's about you repeating the pattern and going through all this turmoil or whatever's showing up for you. If you're not telling them, then they've got nothing to work with, which is what you and I spoke about before, right? It's like talking to a brick wall. Like if it's one-sided, this is working well. So you have to be vulnerable, and you have to, and that doesn't mean
and transparent too.
100%. It doesn't mean you have to go. You're going to be a bit guarded if it's all new to you.
Yeah.
So for you and your experience, obviously, given, you know, your upbringing and you having that caring way and wanting to make a difference, which you definitely are with your work. What's your perception? I mean, you're coming from the other angle, but coming from as a counsellor, what's your belief in that? Like when people come to you for all different variants of reasons, I would imagine, something that might have just come up from recently, it might be something that's trapped, you know, and they're continuing the same pattern, however that looks for them. When people come to see you, what are they coming for? I know that sounds really obvious, but what are they like? What are they hoping to get from sitting down with you and talking with you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Interestingly enough, I did something on this the other day. And I've realised that most of my clients are male, which is
Really?
yeah, quite interesting. I didn't realise that. Someone said, "Well, I'm looking for someone to help me market my coaching program," and they said, "What's your demographic?" And I'm thinking, 45 to 65-year-old women, or 35, whatever. And it ended up being a lot more males, and I'm like, "That's interesting. I would never have said that." The males like me because I'm a no bullshit coach, and I say to them, if you're going to sit there and bullshit me and tell me what you think I need to hear rather than what you want to resolve, you're wasting your time and your money, and you're wasting my time too.
Yeah.
And I'll call you on it.
Yeah.
And so I'm not one of these people that's going to keep you coming back week after week after week. I say to you, commit to 6 to 8 or 10 sessions. If you can commit to 10, that's only 10 hours. But I'll get to the bottom of it. But I also say, don't use me if you really don't want to dig out whatever's keeping you stuck. So most people come to me when they're stuck and they've got that repeating pattern. I always find myself here, or I want to get to another level. I know there's one, I just don't know how to get there. Or they'll come to me for maybe something that gets them, they'll think they're anxious or they're triggered or something like that, or they're just not getting where they want to be. And I just, I start with where they're at. There's no judgment. And people, I've got some fantastic, actually all my reviews are fantastic, from people just saying, I went from being anxious and insecure to being confident and knowing where I was going, having some direction. A lot of people are lost. So they're just going through the motions.
Yeah.
And I even said these words myself, I'm not, when I was talking to that friend of mine before I left the children's father, and just said, I'm not unhappy. I'm not happy, but I'm not unhappy either. And we kind of accept this middle road. And I think people get to a certain age or a certain time in their life and they just think there has to be more than this. And, people can be the wealthiest people in the world, but if they're not happy and they're just going through the motions and they're numbing themselves, then they're just waiting to die, really. A lot of people are dying while they're living.
Do you think just on that, with what you said about being happy, do you think there's like this high expectation of being happy? Mm-hmm. Like, when which I'm sort of grasping, obviously we've had a big upheaval and still grieving and stuff, but my therapist would say to me, you can be happy and sad at the same time. Like, you can still have those emotions. Yeah. It doesn't have to be one solid thing.
And it never is.
It's always never is. Because, so do you think, we have this big expectation, like this social media, obviously you and I are all over social media with our business, and it's a beautiful thing, but there's a for and against, and the against, I think there's so much out there now of, let them theory and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 up out of bed, and Mel Robbins, like there's all this, I'm obviously got my own podcast and I'll listen to podcasts and, the books and all of that's going on. It's almost like going, well, this is all you need to do and you're good and you're going to be happy all the time.
Yeah, no.
And there's so then that expectation in itself becomes heavy for people because they're like, well, what's wrong with me? Yeah. Why am I not? I've got this beautiful family. Yeah. I've got a great paid job. I've got my health, my family are all healthy. Why am I not happy?
Yeah.
And then obviously then people start looking elsewhere.
Yes.
So there's adultery and all of that because they're thinking the grass is greener on the other side. Yeah. Because there's this expectation and this false illusion on social media that this is what happy looks like. But I guarantee if you go behind the lens,
that's right.
It can be quite often a bit of a shit fight and will tell you the opposite to that.
For sure.
So there's that as well. So when, and the same with something traumatic happening in your life, like what happened with you, how you were raised, if you can say you dragged up would be better, wouldn't it? What you went through as a child, that's part of you.
Yes.
You don't want to, as much as you don't want to remember that.
No, but it's forged you for who you are right now.
Right.
Everything
so it's
you've
part
gone
of
through.
your book.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've written a book as well, but it's a few of the chapters of your life.
Yeah.
So you can't dismiss that.
No.
But it's coping around that, isn't
and
it?
not even coping, but it's like, how are you using that?
Yeah.
You know, I don't like the word coping because that implies sort of
Just
getting
scraping
by.
through, yeah.
Yeah, and so
True.
I don't like the word, survivor either. You know, when people say I'm an abuse survivor or a cancer survivor or whatever, my mum's brother was sexually abusing my sister and I, but I would never call myself an abuse survivor. I don't want that. That's like, no, I'm not surviving. I'm actually thriving.
Yeah.
And I think I did my Tony Robbins and Chloe Mandanis training, Core 100 coaching. And he used to say the problem that people have is they think they shouldn't have any. And but people look people look at their problems as something bad rather than something to grow through. And we need problems. They make us step outside our comfort zone.
Yeah.
And it's only what you do with that problem. And I remember I don't know if you know who Rabbi Twersky is.
Yeah.
I love Rabbi Twersky. I think I've written about him in my book too. I think I put him in there. But he talks about the lobster. And he was sitting at a dentist. And so for your listeners, I'll quickly explain. He's looking through a magazine and he saw this heading saying, how do lobsters grow? And he's looking at this thing, and I don't really care how lobsters grow, but he's reading it because he's waiting. And it says that lobsters are these soft, mushy animals inside of a hard shell. And the only time that they know it's time to cast off that shell to get a new one is they start to feel uncomfortable. And when they start to feel uncomfortable, they hide under a rock to keep away from predatory fish. They cast off their shell, they get a new one, and that shell's too big, and so then they can go away and they're comfy now. And until they outgrow that shell and they start feeling uncomfortable, and then they repeat this whole process numerous times. So the signal for growth,
God,
as
I've
he
been
says,
through some shells.
Yeah, same. But the only signal for growth was the pain that they were in and the uncomfortable.
Wow.
So if you can get comfortable with being uncomfortable, going, oh, okay, this is shit.
Yeah.
And my current partner and I have a brilliant relationship with that. We so transparent. We talk about things all the time, and he said, this growth thing's shit, Pam. And I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
But it's growth, and we're not blaming each other, and it's like, transparency.
Yeah.
So if you can stop blaming each other, you made me feel, you. It's like, no, there is no you. Because I am not growing if I'm blaming you, like, and I mentioned that earlier. If I think, wow, Lindsay, you really upset me, then it's like I played golf yesterday. And some of the ladies, they're not present. And it's just a game. But it's the only place I seem to get triggered right now. And
why is that?
I think because I'm competing against myself, and I have a high expectation, because I seem to be able to be good at nearly everything I do. And I'm not picking up golf as fast as I want to, even though apparently I'm quite good.
Yeah.
But in my mind, if I've hit that ball once and I've hit it right, I should be able to hit it right all the time, but I'm not. So I'm just like, whoa. And what we do, because I work with a lot of golfers, we don't go, that was a bad shot. We say, I'm a crap hitter. I don't hit that ball very well. I'm like, why can't I hit the goddamn ball? I hit it properly just now. It's a beautiful shot. And now I just look like I've never hit a ball in my life. And we make it personal. So I get triggered by not being able to hit that ball how I want it every single time. So it's like, what story have I got running there?
Having an emotion attached to the outcome.
Correct. And it's like, what story have I got running? Because I've made that personal now, that I must be stupid, I must not be good enough, I must be...
Yeah, how much do we do that in a day?
100%.
Yeah.
But if you can have awareness of that, what stories are controlling your narrative?
Yeah.
And what are you saying to yourself? And I work a lot with my clients on that. What stories behind... And I'll listen to people tell me their story. And then I write down everything that I think is relevant. It's like the English language. So when I did my master's on neuro-linguistic programming, we don't use the English language properly. And we use the word don't all the time. But the unconscious mind deletes, distorts and destroys, or distorts at best, all the negatives. So when I say, I don't want to feel like this anymore, I don't want this to be my life, I don't want, the unconscious mind is going delete, delete, delete. It's not discerning. It doesn't know you're having a bad day or you're exaggerating or you're making things up. It just says, oh, okay, you don't want to feel like this. Delete that don't. You want to feel like this. So you're just auto-hypnosis. You're self-hypnotizing yourself to stay exactly where you are.
Yeah.
So I use that as a reverse for when people want to lose weight. They go, people will come in and I've got one lady, I can tell you about her because she was massive and she had a tape measure in 2 hands. And then she had a tape measure in one hand, tape measure in one finger. And then when the tape measure met, she was super excited. And that was after 6 weeks.
Amazing.
So she worked really, really hard on that. And I said to her, I want you to say, I don't want to lose weight. She said, I do. I said, well, why are you still the size you are then? And then, of course, she'll say, well, because I'm too tired, I like my food too much, and I'm too busy, and I'm this, and I've got the kids. And all of a sudden, her reasons for not losing weight are over here, taking her time.
Yeah.
The goal of losing weight's back there.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say, because the unconscious mind just goes, yeah, but. Whereas if you say, I don't want to lose weight, your unconscious mind says, yes, you do. Stops there. So you can use don't in a very proactive way. That's going to give you a good result.
A positive outcome.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than, so people, we don't use our English. It's like, don't slam the door. How many times you say that to your kids and bang?
Yeah.
Because their unconscious mind just deleted the don't.
Yeah.
We don't focus on what we want. Close the door quietly. We focus on what we don't want. And most people get stuck there. And they also get stuck in, I don't know how I'm going to do that. It's not our business to know how. It's our business to know what we want. And I have this whole a hypnosis thing that I do with neurolinking when people find it really hard to drum up the emotion. Because it's hard to pretend that your life is all beautiful when there's crap going on over there.
Well, it can be exhausting.
It is, because you know you're lying too.
Yeah,
and
it's just putting on a pretense.
100%. So then you're actually activating that part of you that says that's a lie and you know it is.
Yeah.
And you're reinforcing that. So I do a thing called borrowed benefits, and which is from emotional freedom technique tapping, which is one of the best things I ever learned, by the way. But neurolinking, I can find a memory that maybe it was with my girlfriends when we were like getting drunk one night and this happened, and I can start thinking, I can feel the fun in that, or I can feel the laughter or the love, or when my children were born, how much love I had for that newborn baby.
Yeah.
So I can think about that memory and then immediately think about my new goal of getting through whatever it is I'm going through right now. And then I can think about my favorite color, and I can think about my memory and the goal I'm just writing now. And I can think about, so I can neuralink all those good memories.
So is that like all the good endorphins then coming up for you?
Well, you're bringing up, if I think about the fun that you and I had when we first met and how the conversation was really good. It was a lovely night.
Yeah.
And we had a great time and a good connection. I can think about that, and that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
So then I can think about, I want to get through what I'm going through right now, and I can think about that.
So then there's like a congruency then.
Correct.
Because you're not being...
I'm not pretending.
That friction is pretending incongruency, so you're out of alignment.
Yes.
Where all of a sudden you've got that good memory.
Yes.
Which is surrounded you having to do that paperwork, your tax that you were dreading doing.
Yes.
But so then there's a congruency, and you're more likely to get through that feeling better about everything.